Can you imagine what the compensation for, let's say, downtown Vancouver would be, and whether the people of British Columbia could afford to pay that compensation?
Businesses are leaving Canada. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got more businesses leaving for multiple reasons, whether it's Mark Carney's inability or desire to get a deal with Donald Trump, 10 years of Liberal rule that has absolutely destroyed our country, or First Nation land seizures. There's no shortage of reasons to drive business away from Canada. Let's jump into this. We've got Carney Liberal government approve the sale of Burnaby, BC refinery to Texas-based Sunoco. Why? Why are we selling our refineries to America? $9.1 billion deal. Poof, gone. Ottawa approved this. They had to. These big deals like this, Ottawa has to approve this. Carney said, you know what? Sell that to America. Instead of a Canadian-based company owning and refining that produce 1/3 of all gasoline for the GVRD, the company is now US-based. This is disgraceful. This is not elbows up. This is not fighting for Canada. As this person's pointing out, one more for the chart. Yeah, I did look into this. This is not connected to Brookfield or any other companies like that, nor Carney's investments, but it does seem to be a plan here. Moving ahead, we've got this one here. New Ontario furniture company announces it's leaving Canada for the US. It's every day now.
We live in kind of rural Ontario, and we think of ourselves insulated from the greater world, and suddenly it hits you that you're not.
After more than 3 decades in Lindsay, Bolsag Canada, a furniture-making company known for its wooden chairs, is shutting down. Its U.S. parent company, Mighty Inc., says it will move production south of the border. Bolsag Canada was a privately owned Canadian company before it was sold to the Utah-based firm in 2017. In a statement, Mighty said the decision reflects both macroeconomic and operational realities, citing the challenges of fluctuating tariffs, shifting trade policies, and rising costs. MPP Laurie Scott called the news devastating in a recent statement, saying, quote, "This is a direct result of the ongoing trade war under the Trump administration."
It's just every day, more Canadian jobs out the window, tax dollars out the window, going to America. I guess it's good news for Mark Carney and his stock holdings. Possibly this company should have never been sold to Americans. Canada can place tariffs on U.S. manufactured furniture. Yeah, we know how that goes. Put tariffs on America, Donald Trump gets angry, increases tariffs. Just more proof Trump's tariffs are very effective. I mean, it's very effective at bringing companies into America. Time will tell if this strategy is going to work, being a protectionist nation versus free trade. Time will tell. We got Kirk posting this one. Just when someone is actually ready to start building something, 1 step forward, 2 steps back every single time. BC First Nations make illegal challenges to KSI Lissam's LNG project. 2 British Columbia First Nations are taking the federal government to court to quash a decision approving the KSI Lissam's floating natural gas facility and marine export terminal. The Lax Kw'alaams Band and the Metlakatla First Nation filed separate judicial review applications in federal court earlier this month, alleging the Minister of Environment and Climate Change ignored their concerns about the adverse impacts of the massive LNG project. Cut off their funding. No more funding for these freeloading bans. The money isn't free. Taxpayers pay for this, guys. I'm so tired of this. Everything's getting more expensive because we have boneheads like this. Who do you think pays for your bills around there? Literally, these projects do. You got chiefs making $100,000, $150,000 a year. Some of them we've seen up to $900,000 a year, and their bands are only 50 people, and they've got 8 people on their council. It's like you have a staff for an entire town, but your town is 50 people. You have a whole bunch of these tiny towns all over the country. That's what these First Nation bands are, and they have all this veto power. I mean, you see it with the ostriches too, which is being used for good in that case, but that kind of power shouldn't exist in Canada, where someone can say, oh, my grandmother picked blackberries in that bush in that area, so that means you can't touch this land. Like, that's where we're at now. First Nations can say their great grandmother told a story to their grandmother, to their mother, passed along the story how they picked blackberries along this river by this lake, and suddenly it's protected land and they get control over it. That's not how this country works. Because if that's how this country works, no business will want to do business here.
From Robert Morales, who's the chief negotiator for the Hulkaminum Treaty Group and a member of the Cowichan tribes, he spoke on BC Today, our noontime program, about what he thinks the focus should be, since a title has already been granted by the BC Supreme Court. I just want you to hear a bit of what he said.
We'll have the opportunity to sit down with Canada and British Columbia to negotiate a resolution to this issue. For now, they have a declaration of title, and and a court ruling with regard to how the court is viewing how this issue should move forward.
This is going to bankrupt Canada, and they know it. So this purple area here, which is overlapped in this red area, as well as these orange areas, are government land or city land. The red area is the area that the Cowichan were legally able to take from taxpayers. If we take a closer look at this, though, it's much worse than we initially thought, because they're essentially stealing a whole bunch of people's farms here. This is all people's homes. Blueberry farms, I'm assuming this is a blueberry farm, or maybe this apple or pears or something. I mean, this is just a bunch of people's homes. This entire golf course is getting stolen by the First Nations. And look at this. This cuts halfway through people's land, halfway through this person's house. This person's house, after all this is said and done, is going to be half on First Nation land and half not. Like, this is an awful situation, because there's no company on earth that will want to buy land or build anything in British Columbia because of this, until this is settled.
You know, we could be thrown out. Somebody can just come and say, oh, you know.
No, I'm worried that they would claim it, and then we have to pay a lease amount, and that could be like $3,000 a month. That's what they're charging for this type of property for renting.
So that is Paul and Anna Wojtowicz, longtime Richmond residents. And to speak more on this, we're joined by the leader of the BC Conservative Party.
So what they're worried about there is if First Nations come in and put essentially a higher property tax land lease on their own property that they own in Richmond. I mentioned on a previous video, I heard rumors that businesses were leaving that area in Richmond. The Cowichan claimed banks will not finance any business in that area. We are starting to see the dominoes fall. So we've got this $100 million project in Richmond, which is not going forward now because the Cowichan are suing the country, stealing land. This is outrageous. It says here, counselor says $100 million project, denied loan over Cowichan case. Bank says, not a factor. They're saying it's not a factor, but we know full well that's what this is. It even basically tells us in here exactly that. Richmond, BC councillor says company based in the city has been refused financing for what it says $100 million project because of uncertainty over the site due to the Cowichan tribe's Aboriginal title ruling. The bank identified by councillor Alexa Liu said the issue is not a factor in the financing decisions. Liu said the company she wouldn't name is working with the provincial government to get the certainty it needs to go ahead with what she described as manufacturing facility in the title area. This company, they had a deal already in place with one of the major banks to finance their project. So they already had it financing lined up. And then the Cowichan came in, and the city and the people of Richmond are the ones who are losing out here. She said the company already owns the land for the planned facility in the Cowichan area, but was told by the bank it doesn't want to deal with new projects at the time. Yeah, it's because they don't want to deal with that area, that land seizure, because of uncertainty stemming from the court ruling.
The appeals process is going to take somewhere between 5 and 8 years. This creates an enormous uncertainty. How do you get a mortgage? How do you decide to buy a home if you don't know what the value of that is because of this uncertainty? Not to mention, it drives uncertainty beyond this. 120% of British Columbia is claimed by First Nations, which means every square inch of BC, all of our lands, all of our cities, everything is being claimed as potential title. And so it creates a problem in terms of driving investment in British Columbia and being able to have some sort of stability. I mean, private property is the foundation of our economy. It's the foundation, quite frankly, of our society. And right now that is being put in question because of this court case.
So it's not an existing mortgage that is being pulled, but they're canceling this project for now because of the uncertainty over the land title and because of the appeal process could take anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Say goodbye to that project. Say goodbye to those jobs created. Say goodbye to those tax dollars coming into the government. Asked if it had denied funding to such a project in the Cowichan title area because of the case, National Bank initially said in one sentence response, no specific directive has been given to our teams regarding this court ruling. In a second statement hours later, the bank said, we cannot comment on specific cases for confidentiality purposes, but we can confirm is that it is not a factor currently taking into account for our financing decisions. No guidelines have been issued by the bank in this regard. What's going on here is the bank doesn't want to get wrapped up in a lawsuit. They don't want to be involved in any of this nonsense. So they're just like, no, we're not going to fund your project. You're not going to build that in that area. And that's it. Not least with their money. The government has to step in, use the notwithstanding clause, do whatever, and solve this problem. Fee simple title has to exist in Canada, or the dominoes will continue to fall and this Jenga set is going to fall over completely.
Yeah, so the issue is private property rights were never protected in our Constitution, where Indigenous rights are protected in the Constitution.
As I've mentioned, you see Dean posting this, BC Native tribes used to war with one another since millennia. The overlap of traditional territories is well known. How can one band claim ownership in 2025? Is it based on the last winner? If so, that's a big legal problem. And that's what I've mentioned here. Who gets to claim this? You see all these overlaps, this purple one with this red one with this green one, this purple one with this orange one. Who gets gets to claim what? Something we're seeing now is First Nations in America, because you can see this is the divide line between Canada and America. Now First Nations in America are getting interested in taking Canadian land. John?
Yesterday, Merle Alexander also spoke to CBC. He's an Indigenous resource lawyer based in Victoria, and he co-drafted BC's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. He's a member of the Kitsuhehe First Nation. He talked about his reservations about taking the court route. Here's what he said.
I don't think that the solution is to further litigate, because I think there's a real risk in that legal strategy, and that if the BC government takes, if the BC Court of Appeal further elaborates on this lower court decision, then it will become binding law throughout British Columbia. And I think that's the real risk of the current BC government strategy, to just appeal the case.
And isn't that what you're trying to avoid, the establishment of that kind of binding law across British Columbia without it first going to the Supreme Court?
Well, the court decision has already done that. It has already created that scenario that he just referred to. Because if it's not appealed, then it becomes the law. It becomes binding. And so, we're in a situation right now where we actually have First Nations from outside of Canada claiming title, claiming rights in British Columbia because of the way this is set up now with our Constitution and the process that has been set up with this government and its approach to how it deals with things, especially even when it comes to environmental assessment. This cannot happen. We can't be seeing a band in the United States owning and claiming and owning a title in British Columbia. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, we're Canada. We're British Columbia. We need to exert.
This is so ridiculous. American First Nation claiming Canadian land now. This is what the NDP and the Liberals have opened up into our country.
Our sovereignty. And yes, there are First Nations and the First Nation rights, and we need to negotiate and work through that. But we have to recognize that this is Canada and this is British Columbia. For the certainty that we need for our economy, for people, especially for people retired, most homes are their greatest source of wealth that they have, and their retirement is based on it. That uncertainty cannot exist. We need to be able to enshrine this in our.
It's not just retired, it's businesses, it's anyone. And yeah, this needs to be enshrined in law. Well, I don't like what's gone on with John Rostad in the past week or so. He's 100% right here. This needs to be enshrined in law because this clown show is just getting more ridiculous by the minute. This is so preposterous. All these woke politicians, David Eby, the Liberals, you have people voting for them, wanting to fight back against the 51st state. And what do we have now? Potentially the 51st state. It's not what they think. It'll be a chunk of BC being attached to Washington state, and it'll be native land. What a joke. I'll bring you more updates as I get that.
Could you imagine what the compensation for, let's say, downtown Vancouver would be, and whether the people of British Columbia and the people of Canada could afford to pay that compensation?
Downtown Vancouver must be billions and billions of dollars, like $100 billion. It would bankrupt Canada. With all this land claiming, which has happened in the last few years, what else has happened in the last few years? Justin Trudeau dramatically increased the amount of funding going to First Nations, but this funding is not making the lives of First Nation band members better. This is what I've been saying for a long time now. This is going to the chiefs. We're going to dig into the numbers here. Individual bands, because this doesn't add up. So we got a report from the Fraser Institute says federal Indigenous spending almost tripled to projected $32 billion, but modest improvement in Indigenous living standards due to unrelated federal child benefit. What we're seeing here is teal colored line is the First Nation community well-being score, barely going up from 58.4 to 62.4, but the cost has gone from roughly $11 billion to $32 billion. This is bankrupting Canada. This is offering no value. Where is this money going? You can see this is going from 2015 when Justin Trudeau got in to 2021. What are the Liberals up to? And within that report, we've got this diagram here. What does this show? The dotted line are registered Indian on reserve, so any First Nation that live on reserve and how much money they make. The other ones here, this dotted line is Métis, who don't live on reserve, Inuit, which is this green line, who don't live on a reserve, non-status Indian, so these are Indigenous people, don't have legal status, and then we've got off-reserve First Nations is this teal line here, and this is everyone else, every other Canadian, essentially, this pink line at the top. If we look from 2005 to 2020, everyday Canadians went from $41,800 average annual earnings to $50,400. If we look at First Nations on reserve, $17,700, and it went up to $32,000. And the reason this went up to $32,000, you can see what happened in 2015. Justin Trudeau gets into power. This immediately goes up. This is all forms of income, whether people are working or if they're getting government grants, handouts. And that's what happened. Trudeau came in and started giving out more money. Thus, the income went up. But this is not money being made through work. A portion of this is just free money from taxpayers. So we're not creating GDP here. We're just creating a financial burden versus creating more businesses and having First Nations making money, earning a living versus getting it from taxpayers. This doesn't help our country. First Nations needs to be prosperous in making money and paying taxes and doing everything else that taxpayers do. This system is so ridiculous and broken. Just take a look at this. We've got the Matachewan band here. And look, there's 1,000 people that live on reserve, registered population. But if you look at the amount of people on reserve, which is these two, males and females, by the way, how does that work with the Liberals, LGBTQ, ABCDFG, how many genders they have now? Regardless, that's 32 males and 15 females. 47 people live on reserve out of 1,000 people. And then we're paying them to have counselors and a chief to manage all of this. What a waste of money. We've got another example here. Nahai Boot. This got a registered total population of 144 people and one male lives on reserve. This is ridiculous. Now I should note too, there's 54 males on own crown land and 66 females on own crown land. What this is land that they would traditionally say is theirs, but is not a part of their band. So they're living off of the reserve, but still on crown land. And this situation gets complicated because they can build houses on those land, but they don't own the land. And often they'll pay rent on the land, or they also get help building homes. It gets complicated. But if we look at the budget, there's one registered male on this reserve. How many people do you think it takes to run this? Out of total 144 people, most of which have nothing to do with this reserve anymore. Well, they've got 6 council members and a chief. Give me a break. Look at the salaries too. These are huge. Employee salaries. The chief is getting 86,000. Council members getting 115,000. And just look at the salaries here. These are pretty big salaries for council members. 115, 85, 16, 81, 2, and 4. It's very bizarre, these numbers. And if you add in all their travel expenses, $12,000, $11,000, $3,001, etc., add it all up, nearly $500,000 to run a band with one member on it, and say that all of them lived on there. It's 144 people. We're spending $500,000 to manage 144 people. This is ridiculous. This is a waste of taxpayers' money. You know, we could group everyone together as equals, all Canadians, and have the government offer the exact same services to all of us, and we would save a ton of money and we would all get better services. When Justin Trudeau came in, he made it so First Nations didn't have to disclose their finances anymore. Now, there are some First Nation bands. I want to call it a good one here, the Hiawatha First Nation. These guys do a good job. Look at this. All their financials are all in order, and they're all up to date. 2025. I don't know how many there are that are like this, but I haven't seen very many. So hats off to these guys. Look at their schedule here for remuneration. You've got the chief here, salary $79,000. It's not exorbitant. So some of these bands are being run respectfully. And then you see the council members here. They're not even getting salaries in comparison to what I just showed you. Some of those salaries, $86,000, $115,000, and then remuneration. So they're getting some money for certain things, travel expenses or whatever, but it's not that much. So they're not all corrupt. In contrast, look at this one at Heart Lake. Justin Trudeau gets in 2015. You can see there's financials here, and Trudeau gets in. And then what do? Oh, they stopped posting them. Not posted, not posted. They haven't posted anything in 5 years. If you want to know what their finances are, tough luck. You don't get to know. And even going back to 2015, they only have the audited, consolidated financial statement. They don't have the schedule in here. So you'll see some numbers in here. This is basically, a lot of this is the money that the taxpayers are giving to Heart Lake First Nation. Let's break it down on this one. This is for the Sununnemux First Nation. How much money is First Nations getting? Well, Indigenous Services Canada, this is from taxpayers. And this was projected 10 million. What they actually got 13 million. CMHC, another $1 million. First Nation Health Authority, $2.6 million. These next three are provincial, BC. So that's $5-6 million from taxpayers locally in BC, like myself. This is a Nanaimo First Nation, so they got another $200,000 from the city of Nanaimo. There's a few more here. Fisheries and Oceans Canada, $1.3 million. That's from taxpayers. Same with Ottawa Trust Fund, another $51,000, and this Settlement Trust Fund, $1.2 million. This is just in 1 year. I don't know what that is. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, like almost 20 million, and add in the provincial, like $26 million. And this is one band. So if you add this up with all the bands, this is alphabetical. You can just pick any letter here. You can see how many bands there are. There's 2 pages here. That's just E. That's just L, and there's 5 pages here. There's so many bands. A bunch of these are just tiny. So this one, well done. Their financials are here. If we look at the registered population here, this one is 1,500 people, and on reserve here is 500. So only a third of the people live on reserve. Yet we're paying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 counselors and 1 chief. The chief making $145,000, and all the other counselors making $30,000 a year for 500 people on reserve. This is a waste of money. This whole system here is bankrupting Canada. It really is. It's time to make all Canadians equal. Canada is likely paying more First Nation counselors than any other country on earth. Look at this one. Population 346. 0 people live on reserve. Are you kidding me? They haven't posted their financials for the last couple of years. Who cares? No need to do that, right? And what do we got? Chief Ray Murray cashing in $111,000. Doesn't even live on the reserve. Congratulations. All his other counselors here, between travel expenses and their salaries, $23,000, $26,000, $25,000, $30,000. This is a waste of money.